We're back this week for episode 4. I'm excited. We, of course, have our co-host, Alan Wagley, down there.
Hi.
The pro, 35 years in the business, works at Specs, Texas. We aptly call him Whiskey Santa.
I
think that name's going to stick. Whiskey Santa, that name's going to stick. And then we have the professor, Riley, with us, wine somm, our mixologist extraordinaire, as well as our beverage director for Sims Hospitality. He does all the picks and did really good about guiding us through, getting the right spirits. And today, Christmas has come early, boys. Christmas has come early. We have a special guest. It's Alan's favorite whiskey, I think, or close to.
One of them. I've been a big fan of this one.
We have new Riff Distillery with us, Jay Erisman. Did I say that right?
Erisman.
Erisman.
Yeah.
On the show today, talking about New Riff Distillery. It's a craft distillery. You probably already know what it is, so I don't need to introduce it. But they're rewriting the rules, but it's still honoring tradition. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. A new riff on an old tradition. It says on the back of the bottle.
There it is.
That's the mantra.
That's it. Let's talk about where you came from. Okay, you were the spirit buyer for the Party Source, which is a liquor store right next to the distillery. You were a single barrel buyer, so you did a lot of single barrel picks for the store. The store was eventually sold to the employees. That's how I understand it.
That's right.
And then you and your co-partner Ken focused on the distillery, which is located right there next to it. I know it's on a map.
Right.
Really fun. You're in charge of the mashbills?
Yeah, I'm the creative side of the founding of it, and one of several people who scheme up and have been scheming up the mash bills. Our master distiller, Brian Sprantz, has a lot to do with them as well over our history. But yeah, that was I often introduce myself as the whiskey man at New Riff, and it was the creative half of the beginning of it, I guess.
Yeah,
that's a great name to have, the Whiskey Man.
Yeah. So, tell us a little about New Riff. Like, where did it start? Just a relatively young company, craft distillery. It's amazing. Tell us a little bit about how that started.
Right. So, I went to work for Ken Lewis at the Party Source in 2001, a time when this store was, a ginormous store. It might have been the largest in the country at the time. It's very much as big as one of the Specs that we would see here in Texas. And because of that, we had a lot of access to the bourbon industry right there in Kentucky. And it was a matter really of opportunities that the store could present that began to dovetail with the modern renaissance of American whiskey. So, for example, when I started at the Party Source, we had 4 rye whiskeys, period. That's it, 4 of them. Go look at the store now. They have practically 4 aisles of rye whiskey or something like that. Yeah. So the store and the modern bourbon renaissance were all happening at once. And to cut the long story a little short, Ken and I got the bright idea that he should sell that extremely successful store that was completely paid off and debt-free. He sold it to the employees. Ken didn't sell it to the highest bidder with the most money. He sold it to the lowest bidder with the lowest power.
Kept in the family.
Yeah, kept it in the neighborhood. Yeah, did right by those employees. So it is now an ESOP. It's an employee-owned business still, and doing great. They are now one of our customers, but obviously close friends and neighbors. And we would sell that store and build a distillery in the parking lot.
Wow!
And by Jim, it worked. Here we are. We're 11 years old now. Just announced last month that we will go this year we'll get into all 50 states.
Amazing.
So in 11 years, we've gone from having never distilled a drop of anything in our lives to winning multiple double gold medals at San Francisco and getting out to 50 states and a couple countries. We're a little bit in the United Kingdom. So.
I remember when Alan brought it to us, it hit the ground running.
Tasting the juice off right off the bat, you knew something special, especially being so young. And y'all are on the northern part of the Bourbon Trail, so I mean,
at the very far north of Kentucky.
Yeah, so I mean, if you have your little passport and everything, it's in the book. It was there whenever we were there. We just didn't get a chance to go up. Hopefully, we get to go up. So
y'all come back now.
Yes, I bet we definitely want to do that. But yeah, I mean, it was one of those ones, again, you tasted it and then you fall in love with the juice immediately. And like what we were talking about earlier, I mean, a lot of people hide bad juice and good packaging. This is great juice and great packaging. So the bottles are sexy. Everything is sexy about this. I love that it's all higher proof. It's 100 and up, either bottled and bond or higher. And I love that because not only for the juice in a glass, it also shines in cocktails because it's the star.
Yeah.
And it will be.
Riley, you remember when at the time Riley was working as a bartender, mixologist over at the Red Books Bar, and you remember it hitting the shelves?
Yeah, we got one bottle, and we hid it from everybody so that we could make sure to give it to the special ones. We got this really cool Kentucky exclusive at the time, and I just remember it was like it
was fun.
Yeah, we carried it like a badge of honor in the bar.
One of the things Riley had was a lot of regulars, and you would call them up and say, "You got to come down and try this."
Yeah, yeah. No, I remember. Yeah, it was when you get a bottle like that, really any brand, but when you just get something special and you get to share it with people, like that's the most rewarding part of the job. And so, I'll never forget having that one bottle, and it lasted like a week.
Yeah.
And then it was gone, and then we never got it again until it finally
landed.
Yeah, until it finally became like a regular thing in Texas, and then we were able to just keep buying it. It's awesome.
Yeah, Jay, we've all dreamed of starting a distillery, but we all knew better. And it's just such a minefield when you have something like Buffalo Trace and other big brands that have been doing it for hundreds of years and rolling off 2,000 barrels a day.
Mm-hmm.
This craft distilling thing is so difficult. Tell us some of the challenges and how you overcame those challenges. Obviously, you guys are past the challenges.
Yeah, good question, Derek. It's looking back now with a little perspective. And 11 years in the bourbon industry is not very much perspective at all, to be totally fair. This is an industry that is generational when you look at the histories of the distilleries, but also, just to make a proper bourbon is 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
We're only now getting into older aged expressions like our 8-year-old bourbon and rye. So we don't have the perspective of a much older and longer running company. But the hard part in bourbon is looking ahead to what will be needed in years from now. We sometimes talk about we view the world through bourbon goggles, and these are goggles, but they have telescopes on them. And we have to look out there and say, crap, in 5 years, we need another warehouse. We better go get the land today. So there were certainly a lot of challenges spinning up. There's the regulatory aspect. There is how do you go about making it? Are you coming at this from no experience? Are you coming at this from a production experience in the past? And like I said, none of us starting this place up had ever distilled a drop that were actually working in the company. But we had a lot of serendipity along the way. One of them was finding a consultant, master distiller, to help us. And that was Larry Eversole, the best master distiller in the sour mash whiskey business. And he works on a lot of projects for the big companies down in Kentucky. And he lived in northern Kentucky. And when we started this up around 2009, he was starting a consultancy and recently retired and looking for work. And we said, we've got a project for you, Mr. Eversole. So he was a sensei, a guide along the way, and taught us how to run the place, taught us how to make good whiskey. But we didn't come to this with no experience either. Ken is a legend in the Kentucky retail liquor scene. Hall of Famer, literally now in the Bourbon Hall of Fame last September. And so we I had a lot of knowledge in the liquid as well, the history of it, how to go about making it, selling it, et cetera. So we had a lot of experience in parts that probably many people starting up a distillery don't. Many people come to this, they never sold alcohol before. Well, we know about that. We know how to build a brand and stuff like that. We had some more serendipity in finding some other people along the way, like our master distiller, Brian Sprance, who came to us from the beer industry. And he had never distilled a drop in his life, but he's really good at fermentation. And that's where the flavor is really made.
Yeah.
The still doesn't make the flavors. It only brings them out, concentrates
yeah.
them, extracts them. So having him as a partner from the beginning has been critical. And then things like our water supply. When we went looking for a distilling water, maybe with more allure or personality than just hooking into the city, water supply, which is what they do in
Most people just use RO filters.
Right.
They use an aquifer.
Yeah, we discovered right under our feet in the parking lot an aquifer 100 feet down, full of fantastic limestone-rich water.
You're right on the river. You're right on the river there, just across from Ohio, right? Yeah.
So that's what I was going to ask about the water, you know, because I feel like that's like huge in whiskey making, and it makes a break too, you know, whether you have the chemicals or it's just natural, which, you know, people in Kentucky, the tap water is the best in the United States. It's
water's free in Kentucky.
Yeah. And it's incredible.
So
But
much
it's
of it.
also, it's incredible water. I mean, drinking it out of tap tastes different than everywhere else. I mean, when we were there, it was like, I mean, we don't do that here. The Trinity River is great, but I mean, it's not great. Yeah, to drink out of, float it maybe? No. But you know, the water source was one of my questions for you. Was that? I mean, I love the fact that you found an aquifer below you. So everybody in Kentucky does something a little bit different, right? Everybody pretty much has the same way that they're going to do their whiskeys, but we've found that each distillery does something slightly different. What does New Riff say? You know, what separates you?
It says on the back of the bottle, a new riff on an old tradition here. And we are engaged in really very traditional whiskey making. We don't have pressure cookers or microwaves that we run it through to shorten the aging. It's a copper column beer still, feeding a copper doubler, just like most of the big places run. They often have stainless steel stills, but ours is copper. The point being, it's a classic Kentucky distilling setup. Everything is sour mashed. So what are we doing that's different? And we allow ourselves to find to play a new riff on that old tradition, giving ourselves as much freedom as we ever need to discover some new products. Sometimes those riffs are really wild and really powerful, and they're a Metallica grade, Black Sabbath riff or something like that. And other times they're more subtle, and yet sometimes still really profound. For example, the winter whiskey that we offer that you have seen in Texas.
I feel like you're teasing us now.
You'll see it again. The mash bill is a chocolate oatmeal stout mash bill.
Wow.
Totally unprecedented in Kentucky distilling history to do anything like this.
That's the beer guy. That's the beer distiller.
That's exactly what happened, yes.
You know, a beer wort being distilled, most of us take the simplest grains, throw them in there, and just trying to get sugar out, get the alcohol out. But you know, a beer grain takes a lot more work because you have to make the beer taste good. The wort, you don't get to distill out anything. So I think that kind of is an interesting thing that you're doing, using a beer distiller to make whiskey.
Yeah. So that's an example of a very loud riff, but one of the most profound riffs, and the one that lots of us at the distillery really is the most meaningful to us, is the one on the front of this bottle, and we're about to taste, I think, our bottled and bond bourbon. Everything we make is bottled and bond, with the exception of barrel-proof projects like the single barrels and our single malt and things like that. We don't make 90-proof small batch. We don't make 80-proof 1.5-year-old. We make everything bottled and bond, but there's a riff inside of that even. The one thing that the federal bottled and bond regulations allow you to do to change the whiskey, the bonded product, from the state that it's in the barrel, besides adding water to make it 100 proof, which obviously you need to cut it to the required 100 proof, they allow you, the word they use is chill proofing. You're allowed to alter the spirit by chill proofing it, which means chill filtration.
Additives.
Well, we don't do that.
Yeah.
And so the front of our bottle amounts to a new riff on maybe the most sacred of Kentucky whiskey traditions, which is the Bottled and Bond Act of 1897.
Yeah.
The first time that Kentucky's distillers stood up and said, no, dang it, we make the proper good whiskey. We need it protected. It was the first time a spirits region in America, or almost the world, stood up and declaimed for themselves that we do it the right way. So Bottled and Bond is like, that's the 10 Commandments on the Mount Sinai moment of bourbon. And we do a riff on that because we don't do the one thing that the federal government says you can do to change the whiskey. We don't filter it. So Bottled and Bond is the world's highest standard for brown spirits. We take that to another paradigm, which is Bottled and Bond without chill filtration.
Wow.
We have a sticker. You know those stickers that have the letters of a country, and it says Finn, and they're from Finland, or it says, FR, and they're from France. Well, we have a sticker that says BIBWCF, bottled in bond without chill filtration. So we're one of the few Kentucky distilleries that bottle everything they make. Even the gin is bottled with no filtration. So that's a powerful riff. It doesn't appear to be revolutionary, but in fact, it's quite a standard to hold to.
Yeah. In 1 minute, Professor, tell us a little bit about why, what happened bottle. What's this bottle and bond thing for our people that are learning?
Bottled and Bond was I think it was the very first consumer protection law that was introduced by Colonel E.H. Taylor, and it was essentially established to protect consumers against drinking bad whiskey.
Right around Prohibition time, or right after the war, everyone was making whiskey. They called bathtub gins, and people were making whiskey. With radiators of cars. They were doing all kinds of crazy stuff. So someone had to do something.
Yeah, and the government stepped in and said, "Hey, here's how it needs to be done properly: regulated barrels, regulated proofing. It has to go in at a certain proof. It can't come out at a certain proof. There's quite a bit, I think, that goes.
It's a lot more work.
Yeah.
It's a good stamp to have.
It is.
All right, the most fun part of the show. All right, the tasting segment. Okay, so we're going to be going through 3 bourbons and then some little surprise in the end. So the first one is our high-rye bourbon. We're going to taste it and give our thoughts.
I already finished my other one too, so
I
wish I can that I can pour.
All right, giddy up, Alan.
I know.
It's when Christmas came early.
It's Wednesday.
All right, so we have a 65% corn, 30% rye, 5% malted barley, aged 4 years. But Jay, you give us the little rundown on this, what we got drinking here.
So this is our flagship bourbon, the Bottled and Bond without chill filtration, Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey, 4 years old indeed. It put the mash bill on the bottle. It's printed on the bottle. We not only are happy to talk about the mash bill when many people keep theirs a secret, but we print it on the bottle, and not very many people do that either. 65 corn, 30% rye, 5% malted rye.
That's high.
So unquestionably a high rye bourbon. When the average mash bill in Kentucky is 12 to 15% rye, we're double that. That's certainly high rye. So we were going for big, bold flavor.
High bourbon, too. I mean, 51%, just for the people learning, 51% is required to be a bourbon. Otherwise, just whiskey. Mm-hmm. But 65 is, a lot of people, some people go 75. So, they change around. The mash bill is what you're in charge of, right? Somewhat?
I was one of the voices, certainly in the beginning, saying we really want to do high rye bourbon.
All right.
That was something that we watched the American whiskey lovers, Kentucky's whiskey consumers, just light up around in the mid 2000s when high rye bourbons began to become a thing and become more often, more common. It became part of the lexicon. When I was a wee lad, you were smart about bourbon if you even knew there was wheated bourbon. You didn't talk about high rye. And we watched as people ate that up, and we thought we wanted to go that direction as well.
Let's give it a try.
God, I love the nose.
Oh, man, the finish.
It's so good.
No, and this is your standard product.
Mm-hmm. I think people get, they get a little bit gun shy about, 100 proof and plus. And, we always tell people it's always the second sip, right? Second sip's always the best sip because then, coat your palate, get it going, let it go.
Yep.
But, you know, a lot of people don't understand when whiskey's done right, you know, 100 proof and plus could be the smoothest things that you're ever drinking.
Yeah.
I mean, it can outshine, you know, pretty much anything. Plus, it goes longer.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the sweet spots are on these, where because you just continuously get the flavors going, and it's a long finish, you know, a little chewy. It's great. Love it.
Yeah.
So that's where I think that a lot of people's misconceptions are on, you know, higher proof is a lot of burn. No burn.
No.
No burn, especially when you don't filter the whiskey,
Yeah.
and it's non-chill filtered. We retain all of the good qualities of the whiskey in the barrel, the aroma, the color, the flavor, but very importantly, especially for an American whiskey, the texture is retained. We retain all of the fatty acids, the creamy parts of the whiskey. I hear so many people say on every time I'm in the world, and they say things like, that doesn't drink like 100 proof, or that doesn't drink like 115 proof, maybe a single barrel, because they're used to 100 proof whiskeys that have been filtered and have had that texture attenuated or hollowed out. And ours is a lot more mouth coating, richer that way. I think that could be one reason that people fall in love with our rye. And we hear all the time, I don't like rye, but I like yours. Well, maybe they needed to try one that was
Rye
as rich as it could be.
At the beginning, anyway. I'm a huge rye guy. I will rye all day long.
He is a big rye guy.
I will rye it up. I like the spice. I like, like I said, I like the long finishes, but I think the rye does get a bad reputation with, a lot of people think that they want the corn because maybe it's a little bit sweeter, but the sweet and spice always works well together. I mean, it's hand in hand. Everybody loves the sweet and spicy, like salty and sweet. It's sweet and spicy too. So,
Weinstein, what are you tasting?
I was just kind of actually jotting that down as we were talking, but to me, it tastes like a very classic bourbon, but there's just some note to it that makes it stand out. And I think it is the mouthfeel. It definitely has that texture to it. And I think it has like a nice, like slight sweetness to it, like a little cereal or honey note, baked, spices.
Yeah.
That's kind of what
I'm going to take a little guess here. I do a little 8-gallon stuff for fun, right? And I feel like a lot of people make the mistake of distilling too high and to get into 160, and they're like, wow, you got 160 proof, 180 proof. And I feel like, this is a novice talking, I feel like that takes out all the grain taste. The grain that you work so hard to put in there, you just strip it out.
Mm-hmm.
All those little tiny molecules, right? I feel like you guys don't do that, but you tell me how,
Right. So our whiskey comes off the doubler. That's the second still at a very reliable 135.
Yeah,
proof.
knew it. See, a little lower.
Yeah.
And you don't get rid of you don't strip out that flavor.
Mhm.
All right, well, let's go to the next one. What do you guys think?
Yeah, let's do it.
Talk us through the next one. We're doing we're going to do the single barrel rye. It's 113 proof, so higher than the bonded 100. Aged 4 years as well. Is it just a rye? This one just rye?
So this is our single barrel rye. The mash bill is the same as our bottled and bond rye, which is right here. It's 95% rye, 5% malted rye. Derek, I'm an English major. I don't have a lot of math, but even my math tells me that's 100% rye.
Yeah.
95 rye, 5% malted rye. And by the way, if that sounds like common mash bills of rye that you see all over the country, it is because we were trained in this by Larry Eversole, the former master distiller in Indiana. But we're putting our own riff on this, so it's 5% malted rye. We find the 5% malted rye, it's kind of a leavening effect. It tempers a little bit the potentially very spicy quality that you get from such a high rye mash bill as 95%. As we'll taste in a minute, when we taste 100% malted rye, that's exactly what it's doing.
I like to teach a little bit, and just for people learning, a malted rye is where you take the seed and you germinate a little bit, where it sprouts just a little bit, and then you capture that right when it's sprouted. So a regular rye would just be the grain, and then a malted rye would be when it's just been watered down and allowed to germinate.
Yeah, that's
slightly.
the malting process in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So people don't know that. A lot of people don't know that, but that's what the malted rye is. So you know that adds more amylase, more sugars, those kind of things.
It creates a little package of enzymes in the seed that turn starches, which are long molecules. The enzymes cut those long molecules into shorter chain sugar molecules. The plant can thrive on these sugars until it has green leaves and it begins photosynthesis. And then when you dry and arrest that process, you have created a malted grain. You can malt almost any grain. I think you can malt any grain because that's how grains grow.
Yeah.
There's grains that are commonly malted and grains that are not.
Yeah.
Malted corn. Oof, that's tough. That is a real tough one, man.
Yeah.
Don't go malting corn.
Yeah. I've never heard that. I mean,
It can happen.
we
but-
malt barley all the time.
Yep. So the most common grain is malted barley. But here at New Riff, we have worked with malted barley, malted rye, malted wheat, malted oats. We've worked with many different malts and made oats. Yes, well, that goes in the chocolate oatmeal stout mash bill, which is the winter whiskey.
Okay, you're nerding out. Like,
Yeah, if rye whiskey is almost the hardest thing to make, I can tell you with certainty, oat whiskey is even harder.
this is I love the geekiness of this.
I know.
Wow.
Let's dive into this high rye. No, this barrel proof rye. Let's do it.
Single barrel rye.
Think about rye.
Let's check the proof on this one, Riley. What did it say down in the corner?
I think it's around like
113.
13.3.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah. So we go in the barrel with New Riff whiskey at 110, comparatively low. Of course, the legal maximum is 125, and most people do that because it costs them the least amount of cooperage. If you make this much whiskey off the still and you cut it to 125, now I need this many barrels. We cut it to 110. We need this many barrels. Why are we spending all this extra money to age at 110 proof? And we learned in our research that the whiskey would show better younger at the lower barreling proof. So we needed a 4-year-old to come out and be banging, come out and win, I don't know, sweeping the table of double gold medals at 2019 San Francisco.
Yeah, and
with
banging it
10
is.
dishes.
This is delicious. This is delicious. And I know I love ryes, but even more, Whiskey Santa loves ryes. So is this the quintessential rye for you right here?
To me, yeah. I mean, it's spicy. It is spicy, and then the commercial. I'm spicy. This thing it'll just light up your senses, and it wakes me up. I love it. This is coffee to me. I'm just gonna coffee. I will jump into it.
Now that we're in the barrel proof territory, and this drinks with total balance and approachability and control at 113 proof, it's gone up just a little bit from 110. So this was probably on, I'm going to say, the third floor of the Rick House, probably, and it's gone up a little bit. But I like to drink these with a splash of water, and I get additional flavors and aromas that come out with the water. This happens especially to unfiltered whiskey. So and you can try this at home, everybody, with your own bottles, but look at the oils that swim around in here when I add a splash of water.
Oh yeah, I see. It's all
see that?
cloudy. I see it's very cloudy. Yeah.
Yeah, it gets oily. This is smoothness you can see.
Wow.
And that's how I like to drink this stuff.
Oh,
Now,
the nose opened up.
everybody should drink it any way they want. Like I've been saying for 24 years in the industry or whatever, drink your whiskey any way you want. Just buy it from me.
There you
Yeah,
go.
right?
All right.
Good one. Good.
Never spoken.
Whatever goes in the glass, you can't take it out, right? Unless you're drinking it. I mean, that's the only way it's coming out is when you're drinking it. So when people put Sprite, whatever they want to put in there, water, ice, doesn't matter. Whatever. When you put it in there, you completely change it. So this one, I am a straight drinker. I drink neat and always neat. And then I'll add if I want to play and stuff like that. The nose just popped as soon as you put it in.
Yeah, it changes. Yeah.
I'm getting a little fennel, licorice on the nose.
Absolutely. So there's clove is the lead flavor descriptor in rye whiskey, and certainly we have that. There can be various peppers, peppercorns, pink peppercorn, black pepper sometimes, but our rye often has, to one degree or another, a degree of a menthol, but not like peppermint candies or something. It's more floral than that, like wintergreen or spearmint, and sometimes that slides into root-related things like sarsaparilla root. People say, You remember those little root beer candies we ate as kids? Those little barrels. I'm tasting those. They taste something like sarsaparilla, sassafras, licorice root sometimes. Not like a licorice jelly bean.
No.
Not star anise, but the root of the licorice, the rooty quality that I find fascinating. It's so
no
cool.
one likes
Whorehound candy.
See, and that's a word that I'd heard. I don't know what a whorehound is. And I mean, I probably dated a few, but I mean, it's yeah, it's one of those. But a whorehound, I don't know what that is. So
Yeah, it's I think it's a plant. It's a traditional candy of the American South. You can find them in around here. Go to what's it called Buc-ee's. I guarantee you, there's some whorehound candies in a Buc-ee's.
Lucy's is the way to go.
All right, next on our list is the new Riff Malted Rye. So this is the malting process we were talking about. This one's aged 6 years, and as you pour it up, Riley, let's talk about finishes. What do you get in the last two so far? What kind of finishes are you getting on that?
On the one we just tried?
Yeah.
I was right there with Alan, and I got sarsaparilla. I definitely got a rooty note too. I mean, the forefront is definitely rye. Like you can pick that up, the baking spices, the clove, like 100%. That's right up front. But then that finish is what is long and drawn, and that's where I get some of those rooty notes, like the sarsaparilla, the licorice. I do get a nice little spearmint, like a freshness. I was thinking like fresh in my mind. And so I think, the hammer on the nail there, like that's exactly kind of what I was tasting as well.
Even at 113, I mean, you expect that maybe that burn, that Kentucky hug burn, but it's not. It's more like a little blanket goes over you, especially for today. I mean, it's 18 degrees here today.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is perfect.
All right, Jay, we're about to have this malted rye. Tell us the difference between this one and the one prior.
So the mash bill here is 100% malted rye. Malted rye is still a pretty rare whiskey in America. It is a legally delimited whiskey by the federal government. There is regulation. You can make straight malted rye whiskey, which requires 51% malted rye. So this is 100% malted rye. And when we went to make this, I have to confess, in all my career, I had only because it's a rare whiskey. I'd only tasted one malted rye mash bill, and that was not really going to tell me what this would taste like. So we went and made malted rye, and I wondered, what does the malting process do to the rye grain? Because you change it when you malt it, and I thought, what if it makes it even spicier? Sign me up. I would love that, but that's not what happened. Tasted. And it got
I get a very
soft.
Yeah, I get a very soft, almost kind of like a slight toasty smell.
The nose to me is like a bouquet of flowers.
Yeah. It gets elegant, graceful, sophisticated, where our regular ryes can be coming down the mountain with spicy flavor. This one is so laid back.
Well, it's like a symphony meets a rock show.
I think the 6 year takes part in this too. More age in the barrel definitely takes it, mellows it out some more. Definitely rounds it off. It's really good.
Yeah, this juice
drink this every day.
was really good at 3 and 4 years old. But we waited for it to be 6 to kind of put an exclamation point on it. At the top of our core portfolio is this rare bottled and bond, no chill filtration whiskey that also sees our most expensive barrels go into this. 24-month air-dried cooperage is used in the malted rye.
Wow. It's one of my favorite.
Really, really pretty stuff. We came to think of it as a malt whiskey first and a rye whiskey second. It doesn't taste like single malt scotch, but it has the bearing. It has the shape, the personality, the delivery of a malt whiskey. It just happens to be rye.
All right, now we're getting a little crazy. What are we doing here? We have something that you don't normally see from a distillery that makes whiskey. I have in my hand here a barrel-aged gin. What were you guys thinking? Kentucky Wild Gin. Is gin making a comeback, or is this something
hope so.
You had a wild hair? What's
I hope
going
so.
on here?
So there's a lot of reasons why we made gin as well. It was a product in the early days that we didn't need to age, even if we did age it for 6 months to make this one. The regular Kentucky Wild Gin obviously gives us a product to have on the market, to have some conversations with, to serve in our gift shop eventually, meet some bartenders. I wanted to make a gin because I'm a gin lover. A huge influence for me personally on this entire project was my father. My dad is a chemist by training, and he is a gin guy. He raised me right to know gin and make martinis like he does. My dad, with his chemist background, would make his martinis every night in the kitchen in a graduated cylinder.
Wow.
And he even had a plastic version of the graduated cylinder. When we went on vacation, stay at the Holiday Inn, kids, go find the ice machine.
That's a dedicated man.
And there in the hotel room, he would make down to the milliliter the same martini he had the night before. He was the first mixologist I ever knew. It was my old man. So he enjoys them to this day, and he still uses a graduated cylinder. So I love gin, and I wanted to make a gin. It was a way to have a product that you could have a lot of soul instilled, distilled into a gin, which vodka, not so much. I mean, unless you're growing, heirloom potatoes on your family's farm, then that's a vodka with some soul. But to just make Kentucky vodka didn't seem to fly. But gin, and then adding to that ethos, we call it wild gin because it is what some people call a terroir-driven gin. A local wild forage botanical gin. My philosophy is anywhere you are in the world, possibly excepting Antarctica, there is something there that can become a beautiful gin. And if you will harvest your locality into a gin, you will have something distinctive to your land. And here we were in Kentucky, a great whiskey region that doesn't have any gin made from Kentucky, not merely made in. There's not very much gin distillation going on in Kentucky. There are gin bottlings, but there's not very many people distilling it when we started this. But let's distill one out of Kentucky, harvested from there. What do we have? When you drive down the road in Kentucky, you will pass pine trees on the side of the highway. Those are juniper trees. Sometimes you drive past them and they look kind of blue. They're covered in juniper berries. So we harvest this local juniper and put it into the gin. We also get another botanical called the American spice bush. This is an ancient seasoning in the Kentucky Valley. The native peoples use this in their cuisine for probably thousands of years. It's part of the flavor of where we come from. And so we get these local ingredients into a gin, and we make Kentucky wild gin. So.
Wow. So in order to have a gin, you take the white dog, which I assume you're using the same mash bill, take the white dog, and then you macerate it or you either steam through it, but maybe you're macerating.
Right.
It needs to be, I think, 51% or something of juniper, but then you can put any botanicals. So some botanicals are the fun part. You can really go anywhere you want. There's no real rules on how many botanicals you want to use.
Right.
And it's really something that could, and you barrel aged it look like. So maybe you spent a little time in the barrel, very light, maybe a year or two or less.
It's 5 to 7 months in the barrel.
Okay, 5 to 7 months in the barrel. So that gives it this color. Normally gins don't have color.
Much color out of 5 to 7. So I mean, I can see that like a little reposado, pulls 6 months.
We wanted it to be definitely barrel aged, but still have the crispness, the clarity of a gin. There had to be enough of that.
Are you using new or used?
Used. This goes right into new Riff used bourbon barrels.
Wow, let's give this gin a try. Wow, that
Very smooth.
that is a different gin. That is a very different gin.
Definitely not juniper forward.
No, it's kind of.
I mean, you know what? You can taste the gin.
You definitely taste the gin.
It's there. I get like and maybe my taste buds are off from drinking whiskey beforehand.
Oh,
but
I taste this gin.
yeah, no, I knew it was gin, but
Yeah.
it gives me like a pine. Like I get pine, and then kind of like a citrusy, floral finish.
Well, the local juniper is the Eastern red cedar. We use 2 juniper berries. I do use juniper berries from Europe, plain old juniper, which is called Juniperus communis, common juniper. But then we use Juniperus virginiana, which is the Eastern red cedar. And it has, indeed, a cedary, herbaceous flavor going on, but sometimes also a fruitiness. Some people have smelled the juniper and said, man, I get like guava.
Yeah.
It has a really marked difference. So there's a lot of juniper in here actually, but it's a layering of different junipers that help drive the complexity of it.
I love when people say like a fruit or something that I didn't pick up, and then I want to go back and see if I can find it. I mean, but I do get the tropical notes to it. So I was at Tales a few years ago in New Orleans, huge gin, and I completely fell back in love with gins. Being brown spirits all day, every day,
Right.
I love gin cocktails. Love them because the flavors just can go left, right, forward, up, down. Doesn't matter. You're all over the map, and just depending on where you are in the night,
Right.
it's gonna go nuts.
I hope our gins, I certainly believe they make smashing cocktails.
My son actually drinks that, and he's a 22-year-old,
Good.
young man, and he's
Bringing them up right.
he's a gin guy. And I'm like, I super cool about that. I was I like gins, and I was like, go for it.
Yeah, this makes one of my favorite cocktails to make with this, the Martinez. A Manhattan, but you're swapping in gin. But when you swap in a barrel-aged gin, now you are retaining some of the aspects of the whiskey, the vanilla, the little bit of oak that you normally lose when you put gin into a Manhattan and make a Martinez. So this makes a real mind warp moment. Like, what am I drinking? It tastes like a Manhattan, but I ordered something with gin.
Yeah.
The Martinez is really, really a home run with that. And then it also makes a smashing Negroni. Oh my goodness. The textural contribution that it puts into a Negroni. You got to try it.
We've actually had a Negroni at Monarch Stag when we first brought this in, because we're both huge Campari fans too. So, and as soon as that in, we're like, Campari, and let's rock with it. And it is phenomenal. I mean, if whiskey drinkers want something, on that gin side, this is so good.
Well, I'll tell you what. We will add the Martinez and the Manhattan with your brand to the both bars. And for our guests watching, you can come have that drink and taste it for yourself. I just want to congratulate you on going toe-to-toe with the major brands. You guys did a hell of a job. It's amazing. And I want to invite the guests. We have our secret word of the week. Every week we have something where you can come. And this week we're going to do, for lack of a better word, New Rift. Use that code word. You get 25% off New Riff products. So come to the Monarch Stag if you're up in Texas. For viewers watching from your channel, they can, if they're in North Dallas, we have 2 really great bars. The Rare Books Bar, which has over 1,000, 2,000 bottles, and then the Monarch Stag, which is a cigar lounge. Maybe we'll hit that up tonight with you. So we'll have fun.
Love to see it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we'll see us next week. We are excited to. Really nice to meet you. Our first distiller here in the podcast studio. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Derek.
All right. Thank you for watching Whiskey Table.